This is actually for Jonathan Pellet, and some of you can also address this. I'm wondering, you mentioned the outreach of the Israeli embassy to progressive groups, to the environmental movement. I'm wondering what you're doing in terms of reaching out to the American labor movement, which I'm sure you know is one of the biggest investors in Israel bonds, but also has a substantial grassroots element that can be on both sides of this. And both what you're doing and what those of us in the labor movement or those of us in other progressive movements can do to help you.
Who would like to address that question? Yoni? Do you want to come to the microphone?
Why don't you respond?
Very briefly, we have a Minister for Public Diplomacy, my colleague Noam Katz, who was here earlier. He has very good contacts with the labor unions here in the United States. So we definitely reach out to them, both here in Washington and through our different consulates in the United States. We have to do more. We have to do more. We've invited some of them to come to Israel. We know that there is a hardcore among them which is quite critical towards Israel. So we're aware that this is a group that we need to reach out to. We are doing so. We need to do more.
And talking about labor specifically, I don't know if people know, but that the labor movement is one of the largest purchasers of Israeli bonds. So there is among a lot among pension funds and among discretionary operating funds. So one of the things that there is the assumption that all the labor movement is on the left when it comes to Israel, or is rejectionist about Israel, is simply not true. They have a lot of relationships with the Histadrut in Israel. Question number two.
Let me say something real fast. Can I just say it from here? Is that right? So I want to at the same time compliment the embassy and the foreign ministry and give them a little public push at the same time. You know, they do very well by the labor movement. They're bought in. They get the natural alliance. In fact, Noam's predecessor, one of his predecessors, Marty Flax, who was here fairly recently, I got to hang out with a lot in Israel. I just spent 6 months there with my family. It was just huge, like really loved being involved in the labor movement. But the foreign ministry, especially through the embassy here, does a lot of outreach to other affinity communities as well, because Israel's got so much going on. You know, it's so dynamic. Like some of the video we saw while we were waiting to start, that there's easy outreach to the GLBT community. There's outreach going on to the Hispanic community. We all know about outreach to the evangelical community, however you might think about it. There is for sure outreach to the non-Jewish community, the African-American community, to other ethnic communities. Now, I personally like to see a little bit more outreach to the liberal Jewish community, but you know, there is some of that, especially behind the scenes, even if we don't always read about it. So it really is going on, and it's one of the things that they're really starting to get right.
Another thing to follow up is that you have to realize that the JCRC and other organizations like us are actually force multipliers for the state of Israel. Israel is a small country and can't be everywhere all the time, and relies on domestic supporters of Israel, like Robert Saloff was talking about before, but us to go ahead and carry that burden and bring that pro-Israel sentiment to light, which is one of the reasons why the JCRC is involved in so many different ethnic and minority, reaching out to so many different groups to try and assist in those matters. Question 3. Sir.
I was recommending you should join me tonight. I heard a C-SPAN speech by the next congressman who's been a strong advocate for Israel, and he's working for a private group now, and he was saying now's the time for Israel to make concessions in dealing with what's happening. That there seems to be a feeling in the liberal community that Israel should make concessions on territorial justice. Now, I'm confused because there seems to be a double standard that Israel is always involved, and I find it very perplexing that community leaders who may be a little bit to the left are saying these things, and nobody is answering what they're saying. I don't know.
Anybody want to take that question? The question. Okay, I got it. The question is essentially whether Is there a double standard applied to Israel when it comes to territory? And is Israel being asked unfairly to relinquish territory, essentially?
No, but it's at this time, in view of what...
At this time, in light of what's going on in the Middle East. Anybody like to touch that one? Robert? Yoni?
Sure. There is some absurdity to the argument that in reaction to what is going on in Egypt and Tunisia and elsewhere in the Middle East, that Israel's contribution to making this succeed should be certain territorial concessions to the Palestinians. I think Israel should want to make peace with Palestinians because it's in Israel's interests and it's to Israel's benefit. And I think the role of the United States, and this is where I think we got it wrong last week at the United Nations, right in the fact that we vetoed, but wrong to say that Israeli settlement policy alone devastates trust in the Middle East. I think what the thrust should be, get back to negotiations. The American pursuit should be, everything is negotiable. You Israelis, you Palestinians, we urge you to sit down and negotiate. And the dirty little secret is that except for 3 weeks in September, there have been no negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians for 2 years. For 2 years. There's been less progress in the pursuit of Israeli-Arab peace in the Obama administration. I say this with great regret. Less progress than in any president since Lyndon Johnson. And in my view, this is because of an obsession with settlements. I think it can be fixed. And I would urge the administration to promote peace negotiations with all the same vigor that it promotes a settlement freeze on the part of the Israelis.
Robert?
Concerned that in all of the talk so far, we are suggesting read what the Jews say on the left, what the Jews say on the center, and what the Jews say on the right. I think what we need to be informed on is what others say, what the Arab press is saying, what the media, apart from our own family, says. And I would urge you to urge people to try to become as best informed and as well informed as possible on what our enemies are saying, or what our challengers are saying. It seems to me that one of the issues within the Jewish community is we have the left criticizing the right and the center and so on and so forth. And we really are not hearing what the real other side said. And I would urge to be better informed and to be better able to counter these matters. We do that sort of thing.
Well, all right, let's see before. Oh, gosh. The microphone is just what I need because I'm not loud enough. You know, I kind of agree. But I'm concerned that it's hard to find, and I know Eric, my friend Eric Rosen, who will talk about you this afternoon, will disagree. It's hard to find a lot of objective, balanced, or comprehensive, I don't know what the right term is, coverage of the Arab media. When it's outrageous, it's easy. Everybody writes about it. Everybody screams about it. You can read about it in all the Israeli media and Jewish media. But the everyday stuff is hard to monitor. Maybe Rob and Yoni, who follow this professionally, and Hillary does too, to an extent, have a different take on this. My fear is that it's important for us as a community to know the outrageous stuff that goes on, and God knows there is a lot of it, and way too much of it, and to find ways to call Arab states out on it. But I hope also not to be obsessed with it, especially when it's not indicative of all that's going on in those countries and in their media. And to take into consideration where it's official media, where it's official media for domestic consumption, where it's independent media, and so on. And so while I largely agree, I'm just concerned about what the venues are from which to find objective coverage of what's going on there. But maybe my colleagues and friends can inform me better.
Well, I just say really quickly there. Now, increasingly, Arab media is doing English language version. You know, you can see Al Jazeera English online. It's not the same as Al Jazeera in Arabic, but it gives you a sense. There's Mayan, which is it's a Palestinian news source. It's also in English. Al Hayat does some stuff in English, so you can find stuff in English, and it's good to just include that in your roundup of different media sources.
And is it your feeling that they're relatively representative of what's going on within them as a whole?
I think they're less hostile to Israel in the United States because in English, because they're aware that they're reaching an audience which is going to be more American, more European. So I think it is somewhat toned down, but it's still a window into their perspectives, at least in that context.
I can personally echo that. I've done, I think I've done 3 interviews with Al Jazeera, and the questions that they posed were just like any neutral reporter from NBC or ABC. So they clearly, when they're interviewing in English, it is they understand the audience who's going to.
But it's also from an Arab perspective as well, so it's valuable in that sense.
Sure. I can tell they purposefully go overboard, at least when they're interviewing the Jewish people professional. They know what I'm going to say, essentially. They try to be relatively objective.
I would just, first of all, I'd like to slightly differ with you. I've had some rather nasty experiences in Al Jazeera, but being grilled by a beautiful anchor is not exactly my idea of a good time. But I will just say, what I would though say is that we need to focus on the American media. I think, again, when I get asked to do interviews on BBC or on Arab channels and so on, I always give first priority to the American news, because that's basically what our job is here about. And I think we need to focus on that. I'm not saying we shouldn't read the Arab media and so on, but at the end of the day, we're trying to build minds and hearts here in the United States with the American public, and I don't think they read Al Jazeera or see Al Jazeera or read the Arab newspapers.
We have time for one more. We'll take it from the left side without any political young lady.
Hi, so the Sheikh Jarrah Solidarity Movement is coming to my campus, the University of Maryland, tomorrow. My question is for Jonathan Hallett. I was wondering what the Israeli Embassy's official response to this movement is. The Sheikh Jarrah Solidarity Movement.
Jerusalem is an issue which is of great sensitivity to everyone. I think we have to stress, and this, I don't know enough about this particular organization, I think we need to stress, again, my approach, our approach to the embassy is dialogue. Everyone's entitled to his opinion, to his position. We've stated very clearly Jerusalem is the indivisible capital, eternal capital of the state of Israel. But having said that, we understand that's an issue which we are willing to discuss in final negotiation talks. And therefore, the only way to go about this is to sit down, each side express his opinion on that, and see whether, with the best of faith and only through direct negotiations, we can maybe hammer out some kind of an agreement over Jerusalem, which will not be 100%, unfortunately, to the satisfaction of either side, but definitely better than not talking to one another on that issue. That's what I can say about that.
Just one sentence about Jerusalem or issues like this. Having facts is always helpful. So how many people in this room know that the Arab population of Jerusalem has increased in the last 40 years at a rate considerably faster than the Jewish population of Jerusalem? Having facts at your disposal is very helpful in addressing issues that come up, especially on campus.
And I also, so everybody, I'd like to thank our speakers one more time for giving us their afternoon. And if you please leave here with one thing in mind. Tomorrow when you're thinking back at this conference and you remember one thing, if you enjoy this conference and learn, there's one thing you must do. You must act. Thank you.